Good morning, dolls, and welcome to Little Gretchen's workshop. So, I just had to take a moment and show you this precious little centerpiece that was gifted to me by my precious doll, Lina J, a couple unboxings ago. And it inspired me so much that I started making Christmas things. Now, dolls, I know Christmas 2025, we've already passed that, but Christmas 2026 is already on its way. And Christmas is my favorite time of year. And here in Michigan, we have a whole city dedicated to Christmas, Frankenmuth, Michigan, where it's Christmas 365 days a year. So it's not just me that's always thinking about Christmas and decorating for Christmas and preparing for Christmas all year long. So these are some of the wreaths and decorations that I made with the Christmas supplies that I received in the unboxings that I was late opening due to my Christmas and holiday season celebrations. So a big shout out to my precious doll, Lina J. So I just want to thank you again for all the supplies and the inspiration. So before I get started, I wanted to give you a highlight or an overview of some of the supplies that I pulled out of the unboxing that stood out the most and inspired these Christmas creations. Now, I just want to show you the little baskets I created using the little ribbon, and I made them just like I did the burlap baskets in another video, and I will leave a link in the description. And the handles are just some of the decorative or sparkly cording. Now, this is a different type of ribbon, but I used the exact same technique, and you can see the bottom of the inside of the gold one was like a small metal tray that I had. And the red ones were from velvet ribbon that say Merry Christmas. Now again, all of these were very simple and easy to make by using the ribbon. And again, I will leave a link in the description from the videos when I made burlap baskets. Now this would definitely be an opportunity to use up some scrap pieces of wood or some little buttons and bases that you didn't have assignments for. Now I was partial to this ribbon with the print on it, which also had wire, which made it easy to maintain its shape. So now that I've showed you the baskets made with ribbon, let me show you what I made today. So here's a blonde colored wreath that I've had for quite a while, and I thought it would be lovely decorated for Christmas. So I started out by putting little blobs of tacky glue in the places where I wanted to put the little balls. And I want you to take note that these little balls were simply some balls that I cut off of a red strand. Now in the supplies, she included some random Christmas tree branches and tinsel, which I thought it would be perfect to make a wreath. Now you see I took the little remnant piece and just bent it into a circle with the wire that's on the inside. And now I'm trimming off the long pieces to bring those pieces down to scale so that it'll look like it's a 12 scale wreath. Now the wire is going to pretty much ensure that the wreath keeps its shape, but if you want to close off those two ends, you can do that with a little dab of hot glue. Now this is one of those projects you're going to have to work with it a bit, and keep in mind this is edited video, so it took me a lot longer than what's shown in these frames. But when I was done, I had a nice base that I could decorate as I pleased. And after I twisted and shaped the little green piece, I looked at this lovely piece of tinsel and it had wire in it, so I shaped it into a wreath as well. So sort through your scraps and see what you can come up with. So in this frame, I'm just adding little berries and little pieces that I broke off from some of the other Christmas ornaments and adding them as decorations. And I had a couple little pieces of candy. So something like this, there is no right or wrong way to do it. You can add little beads and pearls and crystals and candy and hollies and fruit and garland, anything you like. And after I added all my decor, I finished it off with a tiny bow. Now this little box I made out of wood a while back and I never had a project for it, so I filled it with Christmas ornaments. And the items I added, I glued them in permanently, so it's all one single unit. Now here I want to show you a tiny box that I created with some really beautiful decorative paper that was among the Christmas things I received. And although it's actually paper, it's pretty firm and rigid, and I thought it would hold up nice as a box. It's a nice bright Christmas red, it had a lovely design on it. It feels almost like watercolor paper, but it's more like a cardstock. Now these little pieces of paper are already pre-cut, so I'm going to cut it the long way to create my box. And here you can see me cutting the paper without measuring. And after I cut it, I laid my ruler against it so I could create little grooves. I just bent the paper right up against the edge of my metal ruler so that the creases will be very defined and easy to fold. As I mentioned earlier, I cut this without measuring it, and I can look at it right now and tell that I didn't cut it square or even. So now I need to use my ruler to level it off and make it square. And you quite possibly can avoid all of these steps if you take the time to measure everything accurately in the beginning. And oh well, that's not what I do. And although I didn't measure, I did use my ruler to create a level line so I would know what I needed to trim off to make everything even. And here again, I'm defining my creases to make sure that everything bends together nicely. And here I'm using the other matching piece to close up the sides and the bottom. Now this frame, I'm just playing around with things, kind of doing what I call a dry fit, try fit, to see how it will look when I close it off, or if the concept of the way I'm going to create it is going to work. And after I was done trimming off the excess to even everything up, and again I used the edge of my metal ruler to bend against the paper to make my seams nice and crisp and easy to fold. Now at this point, both sets of paper have been cut and folded, and I'm fitting them together one last time before I add my glue. Now you want to add an ample amount of glue, but you don't want to really overdo it at this point. Now you can use whatever type of glue you have on hand. But today I'm actually using either Weldbond or Aleene's Tacky glue. Either one will work perfectly with this project. Now you want to be as neat as possible, but I don't want you to be overly concerned because most glues dry pretty clear and you're going to have the box overflowing. So if you do get glue on something, you can cover it with another item. And again, I want to encourage you to take your time. This is edited video. There is no rush. And after it feels like things are holding, you want to set it aside to dry completely before you try to handle it too much. Now, any little add-ons are optional, but I had a little remnant piece and I added glue to one edge and added the additional remnant piece to give the box an impression that it had another flap. Now this flap is merely for decoration. I'm not going to close it, but it kind of gives you a nice backdrop and an additional place to glue items and decorations. But it's not necessary to complete this project. Now with this one, I had added 2 flaps to it, and here I am adding an ample amount of glue on a small piece of foam or sponge that I put into the bottom of the box. Now I know it looks like I've fallen off the wagon back into my excessive glue use, but this is a rare occasion where excessive glue use is justified. Because in this case, I literally want the glue to saturate the little sponge, because the saturated sponge is actually going to create a nice solid base for the items that I add. It's going to create what I call a raised foundation. And the concept of a raised foundation is used a lot in miniature, especially when you're filling things, because you want to use inexpensive supplies on the base where you're not going to see them, and the premium things to be on top and be visible and give the appearance of overflowing, but they're just on the surface. Now I started this little box out with a little pine cone, and then I've got this little Christmas tree. Now the nice thing about the glue and this little sponge, it gives you a little wiggle room and wiggle time because there's quite a bit of glue in there, and it's going to take it a while to set. So there's plenty of time to add the different things, arrange them, move things around. Now, it's no right or wrong way to do this. You just arrange it until it looks pleasing to your eye. If you have to remove something, it's got a little glue on it, it's fine. You may have to add a little additional glue depending on where you arrange or place things on the box or on the flap. And dolls, I really want you to take your time and have fun with this. These are really simple, very satisfying little projects, but you're going to have to allow your imagination to flow and be free. Just go ahead and mix it up. The sizes, the shapes, the colors, the textures. Use different balls and beads and fabric and string and twigs and tinsel. And you want to tuck things in here and there because you want it to look random. You don't want it to look too controlled and too set. And this is the perfect opportunity to use some little random pieces or remnants from other projects, because all you need is some tiny bits and pieces to stick out or to protrude from the box to make it look interesting. And just when you think that you've added enough, go ahead and add a couple more pieces. It's not going to hurt. This is absolutely the type of project that you can say, the more things, the merrier. Even if you set it aside, allow it to dry, and you find something else, go ahead and stick it on. It's not going to be too much. Now this was a truly fun little project. I was using some little paper stockings that were included among the Christmas things. Now they were already cut out, but they were paper, but I glued some of the ribbon that was included on the back side of some of them. And after I glued the little ribbon piece on them, I added a really thin piece of embroidery thread around the edge to trim it or finish it off. Now you want to definitely take your time with this. I just added a really thin bead of glue around the edge and gently press the thread of embroidery floss around the edge. And although it looks pretty simple, it did take a little practice. And you're going to just lay it around little by little, just pressing the embroidery thread into the glue bead. And I had a couple more of the stockings, and I did the same thing, added a thin bead of glue again, and very gently pressed the embroidery floss right into the bead of glue. Now, some areas I need a little extra. I ran my toothpick along it a little bit again and pressed it in. Now, this was a very satisfying project. It didn't take very long, but the completed look looked really, really good to me, and I was really, really tickled to have a little tiny treasure like this. And dolls, I was so excited and tickled about how that one turned out. I turned around and grabbed one of the other paper stockings and glued it to the back of one of the plaid ribbons, and did the exact same thing by adding the glue around the perimeter and then gently tapping the embroidery thread into the glue to complete the look. And by the time I finished the little plaid one, I was having so much fun, I just kept going. And as you dolls know by now, I can never stop at one. Now, when I got to this stocking, this was a really old one. This was actually one that Daddy bought me back in the 70s, and I always loved it. But I felt it looked a little bit plain, and I thought about a way that I could upgrade it and make it look a little bit more interesting. And I had these lovely pieces of wool that were gifted to me by my precious doll, Nessie, from Nessie Monster Crafts. And I decided to add the white fur to the little plaid stocking. So I added a little bit of glue and pressed little clumps of the wool right to the top of the stocking. And I only added it to one side because I didn't want to make it too puffy when I hung it along the fireplace. And it was really cute because it really looked like fur. And I guess it really is fur because it's wool. But that little bit of white fur really added such a nice touch and really upgraded that tiny stocking to a whole nother level. So right while I was working on the stockings, I came up with another idea. So I allowed the stockings to dry. And then I started to glue together little pieces of some of what looked like little holly leaves from one of the ribbons I received. Now, I call them holly pieces because that's what I imagine they are. But I clumped a few of them together, and after I glued a few of the pieces together, I put a few of the little beads or red pearls together to make it almost look as though it was mistletoe or some type of hanging decorative piece. And I did add a little loop to the top so it would be easy for me to hang it for decoration. And after doing that little loop, I thought about the little embroidery thread that I put around the little stockings. I left a little extended part on the edge of the subsequent stockings so I could create little loops to hang them as well. Now, I know I already showed you how to do the stocking, but I wanted you to see from this frame that I've got burlap on one side, and then the opposite side is still the paper from the original template. So it looks cute because you get two different designs on one stocking. Now, with this piece, I was folding over a piece of the plaid fabric, and I'm going to use this plaid fabric as a topper on one of the burlap stockings, and I'm going to use it on the red velvet stocking as well to make them all look different. Because I'm sure by now you dolls know that I'm not a big fan of matchy-matchy. Now from this angle you can see that I just folded over the piece of plaid ribbon and I'm gluing it right to the top of the burlap piece. Now I did want to take a little time and pay a little close attention to make sure the lines weren't crooked. And here you can see I've added a teeny bit of glue and I'm placing my little plaid ribbon right across the top, and I think that looks really, really cute and finishes it off really nice, and again gives it a little contrast and variation from the other stockings. So I'm going to go ahead and set this aside and allow it to dry while I work on something else. Now in this next frame I'm working on creating a tiny centerpiece similar to the one that Lina J did. So I had a small scrap piece of wood and I glued a painted toothpick to the center to be like a little candle. And now I'm adding tiny pieces of the snow-covered branches to cover up the tiny piece of wood to be my base. Now the little branches are going to act as a stabilizer because my piece of wood is pretty thin, and by the time the glue dries it'll all be firm in one solid piece and strong enough to hold the rest of my decorations. Now in this next frame I had created a round shape centerpiece and I'm cutting some tiny pieces of pre-made fruit, which are actually oranges, to add as a part of the decoration. I always thought oranges looked really, really pretty next to the green and the red. So I'm piecing them in with some of these pieces that look like berries. And not only are the fruit and berry pieces pretty, but they're acting as a stabilizer to support the candle. Now, I think this candle I'm using in this one was a pre-made clay candle, but if you don't have any pre-made polymer clay candles, you can simply cut a toothpick down to size, sand it smooth, and paint it any color you like, and it'll work just as well. And you can see in this arrangement, I added all types of random extras and it really worked out well. So here really quick, I want to show you a couple of my creations up close. There's my little holly mistletoe piece and here's one of my little stockings and I put the plaid on both sides. Here's the little plaid one with the white wool. I only did it on one side. And then there's my little velvet one. I added plaid to the top and that's the one Daddy gave me in the 70s. Now I had one more project I wanted to share and it was the one that involves some bells. Now, I got these bells several unboxings ago, and I've been thinking about them for the longest, and I wanted to add them to red ribbon. When I was a child, we always had bells on entry doors to let you know someone was coming in. So I'm going to do one strand of bells for the Rooming House Cafe and another strand of bells for the dress shop Dollhouse. Now I'm threading these bells on a piece of that same red embroidery thread that I used to trim out the little stockings. And in between each bell, I'm giving it a little space and then I'm tying a knot because I want them to stay stationary in the position that I added them on. Now this is another one of those little projects. This is sped up video, so it took a lot longer than it appears in these frames. But little by little, I threaded them on and looped them in between each bell. And as they began to stack up, it really looked cute. And I'm really glad I opted for the embroidery thread instead of red ribbon because I really feel like the embroidery thread is going to drape better and look more natural in a 12th scale setting. Now that I'm done stringing my bells, let's look at everything all together. So here are all my little Christmas decoration boxes, the centerpieces, and the two little wreaths that I made today. Oh, and let me not forget the little stockings and the mistletoe. Now, if this is your first time watching and you want to see more content like this, go ahead and subscribe. And always look for me on Mondays after 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I just want to let everyone know how much I appreciate each and every one of you today for watching and allowing me to share. And until next time, I'm looking forward to seeing you right here on Little Gretchen's Workshop. Bye bye now, dolls.